You're probably wondering how you can play as the Pope in Crusader Kings 3 when By God Alone doesn't arrive until the fall. Well, the answer is you can't, but you can play as the guy who used to be the Pope. Recently, I did a run where I attempted to create the smallest Roman Empire possible. Through a bizarre series of events, I managed to make Cyprus the only de jure Roman land left. Along the way, I accidentally destroyed the Papacy, and that got me thinking. If you destroy the Papacy, the Pope just becomes a regular guy. Regular guys can be adopted. Now, adventurers can adopt almost anyone as their successors, providing they aren't in line to inherit a title. So, in theory, you can dismantle the Papacy, restore it with a new Pope, somehow switch over to an adventurer, track down the ousted Pope, invite him to your camp, and adopt him into your house. In a very roundabout way, you are playing as the Pope with none of the power of the Pope, just his hat. And once you've got the former Pope under your control, you could try and seduce the sitting Pope, creating what may be the very first recorded case of Pope on Pope romance. So that's exactly what we're going to do today. Conquer Italy, remove the Pope, install a replacement, become an adventurer, adopt the ousted Pope, and then attempt to woo the current one. Any questions? Just one. Who's today's sponsor? Today's video is sponsored by Manta Sleep. Longtime viewers know how much stock I put into good sleep. I've used sleep masks in the past, but none that match this quality. I got my hands on their Manta Pro Sleep Mask, which does an amazing job of creating a zero light environment. Unlike other sleep masks where I feel the mask pressure on my eyes, a Manta Sleep Mask causes zero eye pressure. On top of that, the eye cups are able to be adjusted to fit your face perfectly. As a chronic side sleeper, they've even engineered a mask perfect for me. Not a side sleeper, that's fine. They make a wide range of masks, from cooling mask to one made with silk, and even a mask with Bluetooth speakers. Check out Manta Sleep in the description below and use DIFB at checkout for 10% off. We kicked off this run by tweaking a couple of the game rules in our favor. First, we wanted to make sure we'd actually have a chance with the Pope. My heart couldn't handle getting all the way to the end of this challenge, only to discover Pope on Pope romance was impossible. To avoid that nightmare, we set the sexuality distribution to equal. We also cranked up the advantage modifier to 10%, letting us punch well above our weight against larger armies. With that setup complete, our first action was to host a funeral to begin the long piety grind. Edward the Confessor? How are we related to Edward the Confessor? Oh, here's our mother. Our mother's sister is the mother of the Confessor, and that's why us of a different lineage, like a very far away house member. Well, you know, it's really rude that none of the other Wessex children or anybody else did a funeral for this guy, so why not us? Because Robert is one of the CK3 Legends characters, he gets access to several scripted events. One of them allows you to gain claims on neighboring lands and receive temporary troops at the cost of opinion. For us, it was a perfect deal. We needed territory from both the Pope and the HRE, and this gave us a head start. Once the funeral was over, we immediately went on the warpath. We started by attacking our Christian neighbors to prevent the Pope from expanding further, making this challenge even harder. Cleared 3 wars at once, seizing nearly all of Sicily, leaving only Malta outside of our control. 2% to get greedy. What's the downsides? 75 prestige and then 15 stress. I mean, without a doubt, this hits. This hits every time. It in fact did not hit. By 1070, we had already formed the Kingdom of Sicily, but I also wanted Sardinia before any other power could claim it, especially because of the valuable mine. Unfortunately, the local rulers weren't interested in bending the knee, so becoming king was hopefully enough to convince them otherwise. When we spotted the Pope was at war with Tuscany, we jumped at the opportunity to snatch Pavento while potentially helping Tuscany capture Orbitello. With the assistance of the English, taking the land was easy. But Tuscany signed peace before securing the final county. That meant we'd still need at least 2 more wars against the Pope. While waiting for our truce, it was time for the coronation to stop hemorrhaging legitimacy. We were rewarded with a powerful mace, but we also gained a nemesis, one of our hateful cousins. Naturally, I challenged him to a duel in an attempt to humble him. On one side, we have Count Geoffrey with 12 prowess, and then we have my dumbass, King Robert, with 22 prowess. Will this go our way? Probably not, because I'm not very good at this kind of combat. I don't know which ones are the decisions you should make. There's probably a rhyme and a reason to it. You rule the day. Yeah, so just like that. That's how you lose a easy duel with your nemesis. After taking that loss, we decided the only reasonable solution was a small civil war. We stripped him of his lands and his head. Downside was we gained the Kinslayer trait. The upside? Well, we got his lands plus some bones to display in our court. We also helped get the Holy Roman Emperor excommunicated, partially to make his life miserable. The goal, however, was going on a pilgrimage so we could pick up the open-minded perk. You can skip straight to the skill within learning called apostate, which makes faith conversion so much easy. Hold up, hold. Yes! Yes, we did. Immediately after returning from the pilgrimage, we converted to Islam and became a follower of Allah. This made consolidating Sardinia much easier. Just like in Sicily, we launched a series of small county-level wars until the entire island was under our control, while our poor Bohemian allies were still somehow fighting Hungary. 10 years this one war has been going on. That's insane. In that time, in those 10 years, we've been able to conquer all of Sicily. I hope we forgot about Manta. Eventually, our truce with the Pope expired, which meant it was time for another war. This time for Latium itself. Naturally, we called in every ally we had. I'm still surprised they're willing to attack the Holy Father, and somehow that he doesn't excommunicate them all. To be safe, we hired some mercenaries and tipped the odds even further in our favor. As we were closing in on Rome, another scripted event appeared. We were offered the chance to help a random monk to claim either a Byzantine province or the entire Byzantine Empire. We politely declined the sketchy monk's proposal and focused on our real goal, conquering the rest of Italy before it broke away from the empire. Once again, our coalition of allies completely overwhelmed the HRE. During the war, we received an important notification. The Pope could now call crusades. The Pope now has access to crusades, so if he doesn't pull a crusade immediately for Sicily, I'd be so very surprised. But you know, Jerusalem is still an option. I don't think we could win that. Normally that wouldn't happen until 1095, but if either Rome or Constantinople falls into the hands of a different faith, crusades can be unlocked early as long as Catholics have high enough fervor. The war for Italy ended in 1082. The difficult part now was to distribute all the lands to our loyal brother. Hopefully he could handle that responsibility. Then, while checking the Pope's truce timer, we received some very good news. We 100% dodged this bullet. Do you see this? Do you see this lovely situation right here? Hell yeah. Somehow the Kingdom Jerusalem is much more important than, you know, yours truly's little Roman territory. By 1085, we were right back at war with the Pope. Thankfully, with only a single county left to his name, it was a quick victory. Even when he tried to raise troops to fight us off, there was still little he could do. With the Pope now landless, all that remained was seizing the rest of Italy from the HRE, along with 3 small counties that had once belonged to Tuscany before the internal struggles tore the realm apart. The HRE had clearly fallen on hard times. They were practically handing land over to adventurers in a desperate attempt to avoid being conquered. Is somehow next in line to inherit. Is this a guy who was an adventurer? This guy straight up strong-armed his way into the empire. The emperor says, sure, you can have like one of my more valuable Duchy of Franconia territories, probably one of the more valuable lands in the empire. And he says, sure, you can have it, and is now poised, an Andalusian is poised to take over the HRE, all because probably I excommunicated him and also beat him taking his Italian territories. So kind of a shit show in general. We launched another war to snatch yet another duchy from them, and everything was going well according to plan until our boy Robert finally kicked the bucket at the respectable age of 72. His son, King Guy, took the throne. Like his father, he was focused on the martial pursuits, though he lacked some of Robert's overwhelming prowess. Not long afterwards, we finally saved enough gold to form the Empire of Italia, making vassals management much easier. As a newly crowned emperor, it was only fitting that we held a grand coronation so all our subjects could bask in our glory. Unfortunately, our subjects turned out to be a bunch of haters, and the celebration was not particularly well received. At this stage of the run, we were mostly waiting for our truces with the HRE to expire. Meanwhile, this pope refused to die. This is the pope who just won't quit. He's 78 years young, party animal. He is fiddling hard. He's infirm. He's going blind. He's losing his mind, and he's melancholy. But you know what? He's in fine health, which, you know, you hate to see it as his enemies, but you love to see it for Christendom as a whole. By 1094, we were back at war with the HRE to claim the last piece of land we needed. They didn't seem to have much fight left in them, especially when focusing our coalition of Christian and Muslim allies. Finally, in 1096, it was time to deal with the Pope once and for all. Italian Peninsula had been brought under the Ashar control. We are able to permanently expunge the Catholic infidel from this world. So what do we get for doing that? We've destroyed the papacy permanently. You can gain a holy legend. We get 500 piety. The papacy is destroyed. Pope converts to a follower of Ashar, and Catholicism loses ecumenism. If you destroy the papacy, then the Orthodox and them will start being able to beef, like holy wars wise. I didn't realize that. That's something new. You learn something new every run. Now the Pope is just a regular guy with a sick hat, and we're gonna invite him to court. After removing him from power, we needed to bring him back into existence. By converting back into Christianity, we were able to restore the Pope. The next step in our plan requires our current ruler to die so we could become an adventurer and eventually adopt the deposed Pope as our successor. To speed this along, we embarked on a dangerous pilgrimage in hopes of meeting our untimely end. No such luck. We returned home safe and sound. On the bright side, the newly elected Pope turned out to be gay, which would prove very useful later on. Fortune finally smiled upon us in the form of a perfect combination of depression and consumption. We have our boy, Captain Rickard. I guess we'll find out in a second. We're sending Captain Rickard a bunch of gifts. We'll select, and we will continue to play as him. Well, does the money transfer look? Does not look like the money transferred. That would have been sick. All right. So now we're him. Now we got to go find the old Pope. Now as Captain Dick, we needed to make our way to the ousted Pope and hopefully make him our successor. We first need to recruit him into our camp. The easiest way would be to become his friend or soulmate, though kidnapping would have worked too if we had picked up the right intrigue perks. Since that wasn't an option, we decided to do the old-fashioned way. Write him some love letters and hope he was charmed enough to join us. This time, Stephanus was serving as a physician in the court of Bevento, which made recruiting him a bit more complicated. Still, I had faith in our love, even if our intentions weren't exactly pure. After completing a few contracts, we sent Stephanus a hefty pile of gold and began our seduction campaign. The courtship had its ups and downs, but eventually we reeled in the big fish. Romancing him into becoming our soulmate was practically inevitable. By 1101, we had secured exactly that. Unfortunately, even as our soulmate, Stephanus refused to leave his liege's court. Loyal to a fault, apparently. Thankfully, all it took was a little patience. Eventually, he grew tired of his old lord and ran straight into our arms. Our succession was a little messy, so we had to clear the line of inheritance by imprisoning one of our knights. Then it was time for good old Captain Dick to meet his end. Surprisingly, the part was easy. We simply threatened to murder a bunch of random people until the stress became too much and he finished himself off. Finally, Captain Stephanus, the lovely captain who will now be able to seduce the new Pope man. Let's see how that goes. We can seduce him right from the rip, but it says it's going to be very hard. So why don't we just try to befriend him or do something else? But soon, Pope will have Pope love. Now, playing as the ousted Pope, all we had left to do was convince the sitting Pope that he was madly in love with us. Easier said than done. First, we needed money, so we traveled around taking odd jobs to fund our grand romantic campaign and improve Pope Innocentius' opinion of us. Along the way, we realized it would actually be better to convert back to Islam, since we would no longer suffer a head of faith opinion penalty. As an adventurer, converting faiths is surprisingly easy. Just visit a county that follows the religion you want and spend some time in a garden. With that taken care of, we played our trump card, gifting the papal tiara. Of course, Innocente obviously loved it. Then our seduction scheme began in earnest. Over the next 9 months, everything would come down to this: victory or defeat on the battlefield of love. 40 long years. Captain Stephanus, Pope Innocentius II, 88% chance. will it happen? Rome, about to be sacked for the umpteenth time, but the love between two popes cannot be stopped! Huzzah! Of course, the emperor fucking just hits us with my heart thundered like a drum. A hunting party gallops. Hurry, Captain Septimus, cannot have gotten far. Our love has been exposed. My secret exposed. We're a fornicator. We're a sodomite. The emperor says no. I need you, my love, right here and now. With what must have been a minute, but felt like an hour, I reached the clearing. Innocentus is on the ground before me, disheveled and weaponless. Opposite him, and just about to strike, stands a huge stag. My arrow strikes true. The beast falls to the ground. For a moment, all Innocentus can do is stare, but he stumbles towards me and throws himself into my arms. Pope soulmates confirmed. Oh, what a silly little thing to have accomplished. Change Catholic doctrine real quick, where it says only men, and alas we cannot. Italy is here, unfortunately, to stay, disrupting our love. But the Pope and I, for many years to come, will be lovers until one of us passes, myself or him. How much can I ask? How often can I ask him for money? I go to the Pope and I say, give me money. He says, I'm an adulterer. He's an adulterer. We're both adulterers, bro. We're both adulterers. Give me the money, brother. But yeah, that's all I have for you today. Thank you so very much for watching this silly little Pope on Pope love for the very first time in CK3. Ciao.